Hello, North Andover, and welcome to our Raise Awareness. I am Dr. Donna Strait, the Assistant Superintendent of Student Services. Raise Awareness is a new show that will highlight many of the services, programs, and collaborative initiatives within the public schools, as well as the collaboration between the schools and the community. Our mission is to inform the community of the many wonderful teaching and learning strategies in our schools, activities students participate in, introducing our professional staff, and learning how they help our students and the community, providing useful information for parents to use with their children, and focusing on specific topics that you, as our consumers, would like to learn more about. For example, social and emotional learning. Our first guests are actively engaged in the ongoing development of social emotional learning for our students. Today's guests are Nicole Murphy, LICSW, Cognitive Behavior Therapist, and the district's new Director of Social Emotional Learning. Welcome.
Thank you, Donna.
Jim Goslin is the Guidance Counselor at the middle school. Welcome, Jim.
Thanks, Donna.
Pete Concannon is the School Adjustment Counselor at the high school. He's a school social worker and a certified teacher, and we're happy to have you join us as well.
My pleasure, thank you.
And we have Rick Gorman, North Andover Youth Director, Recreation Services, with a master's degree in community social psychology. Thank you, Rick, for coming.
Thanks.
Many of us understand that there is a growing need across our country to support children in the development of their social awareness skills, emotional regulation, and developing resiliency. The Department of Secondary and Elementary Education for Massachusetts has initiated the beginnings of a social emotional curriculum for public schools. North Andover has taken this initiative very seriously and has brought on a Director of Social Emotional Learning. As the Director of Social Emotional Learning, Ms. Murphy, would you please provide us with some insight and overview of exactly what is an SEL initiative and why is it important in our school system and for our students?
Well, for some of the reasons you just mentioned, we have a clear understanding that students are not able and ready to learn if their social emotional needs are not addressed and met. So one of the most important things to understand about social emotional learning is that it is for all students. So we take a preventative approach to social emotional learning.
So could I just interject by all students?
Mm-hmm.
You're not referring to students that are in a special class or only the students who have issues that we're aware of, but you're looking broadly?
Correct. So for example, part of our social emotional learning action plan for the district includes adopting a social emotional learning curriculum, which you mentioned in your opening. What that looks like is a curriculum, just like a math or reading curriculum that is taught to all students, K to 12, across the district. And its purpose is to help students acquire skills that are social emotional in nature. So for example, we're trying to help all students learn how to become more self-aware, socially aware, learn responsible decision making, relationship skills, self-management skills. And you can imagine that all of those kind of skills are necessary for them to be successful, not just in school, but in life, and then to be college and career ready as well.
Could you tell us a little bit about what do you mean by being self-aware? What does that look like for a child?
Well, it looks different at different ages. So for example, what we would expect in terms of skill sets for a kindergartner or an elementary student, age student, who's self-aware is not going to look the same as what we would expect a self-aware 12th grader to look like. So when you implement a social emotional learning curriculum and you have lessons that you teach them that increase their self-awareness, it's progressive in nature. Like all skills, it builds on itself. So a self-aware elementary age student might be aware of the fact that they get anxious before they go to a friend's house. And then we teach them self-management skills so that they're able to handle that. But if they were not self-aware about that issue for them, then they would struggle to be able to express that, and we would have a hard time understanding exactly what we needed to help them gain those necessary skills for them to be able to self-manage and become more self-aware and then progress as they move through the curriculum.
Is this an application that you can also use for students that are in primary grades, like say kindergarten through grade 2? are they able to understand the language and adapt some of that skill?
They are. So again, just using the traditional academic, example, you teach math to kids. You don't start off with algebra at the elementary level. You start off teaching them numbers and then addition and subtraction, et cetera. And an SEL curriculum, social emotional learning curriculum, does the same thing. So it's very age appropriate, the lesson plans, and they are, again, for all students, because we know that students will not be successful in their school career if they're not able to resolve conflicts with peers, if they're not able to express their feelings in appropriate ways.
That's great. So it sounds like you have a global approach at the elementary level, and then you have a tiered approach for students who maybe need a little bit more.
Correct. So although social emotional curriculum and social emotional programming is for all students, we're always trying to create a positive culture and climate for all students so that they feel safe in the environment and ready to learn. As students get older and there sometimes are identified issues with students who need a little bit more support, they might get more frequent lessons in social emotional learning in smaller groups.
Great. That's terrific. So Jim, I don't know if you're aware, I've spent 10 years myself in the middle school, both as a teacher and a building administrator. And I find them some challenging students because you never know which student's going to walk through the door. Can you tell us a little bit about how you meet the needs of students' social and emotional learning as they come through the door?
Sure.
In their different states of awareness?
Right. So it's not if you spent 10 years in middle school, it's not a shock to you that the middle school itself is a pretty unique place.
Indeed.
It's the absolute perfect environment to observe and develop a social emotional program because the students that walk through your doors every day are sort of the height of their social, emotional, hormonal development. And they walk through the doors with wherever they've come, from that morning, and it's a different challenge every day in terms of what you're going to see. And we have the privilege at the middle school of going into classes and walking down the halls and eating lunch and laughing and crying at times and playing with them all day long. So I think we have a unique role in the district in that regard. But you said it is a challenge every day. So we have 1,115 students at the middle school. We have 3 guidance counselors. I feel fortunate that my colleagues, Julie Fauché and Georgia Shute, are phenomenal at what they do. We have a system in place at the middle school that I think works well, where we loop with our classes. And so we get to know the students and the parents over a 3-year period. I think that system works really well. And you need to do that just because the numbers aren't necessarily in our favor.
So it really affords you an opportunity to establish not only a relationship, but a long-term relationship, so you're watching the student and the family grow and progress through 3 years.
Absolutely. When I first address parents and students in 6th grade, usually have a part of the conversation is, we're starting on a 3-year journey together, and it really does. We want the parents as part of that journey, and they truly are, and they're one of the resources that we have. Along with guidance at the middle school, we have a school psychologist, Lindsay Chatterton, who is currently on maternity leave. But she sees a small caseload of students and does a lot of the psychological testing for the school as well.
And does she have a therapeutic component to some groups that she works with as well?
Yes.
She does.
Yep.
Great.
She does with that. We also have a new program, a social emotional program headed up by Michelle O'Leary, also a school psychologist. And there is a special education teacher and a teaching assistant associated with that program as well. We really try to, pool our resources as best we can and set up our systems at the middle school and really work as a team. In terms of other members of that team, we have our 2 assistant principals, Cheryl Ramondo and Steve Wrigley, and we have a fantastic school resource officer in Kara Caffrey. And so we really do sort of, all hands on deck and group together in that regard. We have some great community partners as well, and we're going to hear from Rick and his crew at the Youth Center in a little bit, but we have great relationships with them where they come into the middle school and they help run some groups for us. We meet every week and sort of consult in terms of the community and what's going on with kids in school and out of school. So that's certainly a great relationship. At the middle school, I think we really do get creative at times in terms of trying to wring out from every single possible source that we can. Examples of that was we have our head custodian, Todd Workman. You'll see him throughout the day with kids of various ages working with him. He helps run a mentoring program after school. You'll see.
That's amazing.
It's great. It really is. And you'll see one of our administrative assistants, Melissa Barron, forming relationships with kids on a lunch duty she does every day.
Yeah.
So here she is in the office, and she can not only tell you every kid's homeroom, but she can tell you what they had for lunch that day. So it's neat. Nikki talked about sort of the community aspect of really trying to develop a culture in the school, a culture of support, and it really is sort of that all hands on deck approach. I think at the middle school. To be able to do that. You talked about the RAISE values, and obviously we try and really emphasize those RAISE values in the school and try and instill in the kids that component of some ownership in the school and taking a leadership role, because when you feel connected to a place, you feel valued by a place, you feel so much more safe and comfortable there. So we do have some leadership opportunities within the school that we encourage all students to get involved in. We have a student leadership team with almost 100 students in all 3 grades associated with it. They focus on service work and school improvement and school culture. Example of what they did, they raised over 3,000 pounds of canned goods for Bread and Roses in a canned collection donation this fall. So just some great stuff that they have going on.
Some truly fantastic kids in your school.
We currently have a group of 7th graders associated with a leadership program with the Boston Celtics in the Weatherby School, middle school in Lawrence. We have, it's been going on all year, and they've developed this playbook, sort of an anti-bullying playbook. In the final session that we're working towards now is they're going to be using this playbook to teach other kids what do you do in a certain situation. It's from the bystander perspective. What do you do if you're faced with a racial bullying situation or an ethnic bullying situation or something like that. And so, for these kids to go through that process and be part of it with the Celtics and with these peers in Lawrence, it's been a phenomenal experience for them.
So this program is instructing our students, and they're going to come back to the middle school and really kind of help their peers understand if you're witnessing bullying of sorts, some racial discrimination, as opposed to watching it or turning your back and walking away. It's learning how to engage appropriately and provide assistance to that situation. Is that what is happening?
Absolutely. You talk about needed resources at a school. They say we're outnumbered. Well, students are a great resource for us. If you can teach them and train them and foster them and nurture them into helping in the school and helping out their peers, well, then there you go. You've just put the odds more in your favor. So I think we continually do that. Mentioned about parents, parent communication. Obviously, that's a key piece, and just having that ongoing, open, honest communication. Nobody knows your own kids better than you do, and so I look at it as sort of a two-way educational piece. You can teach us about your kid. We can help to teach you somewhat about the social emotional aspect and the philosophy behind things, but it certainly is a needed piece to, that community to raise it takes the whole village to raise the child, and so certainly a key component there. I think just the last piece is, say there is no typical day at the middle school. I don't think, at least in my 11 plus years, I haven't seen one, if there is one. But I think the important piece is, you come in every day with sort of the idea that, we get it, school's more than just about the academics. And if you come in every day with that, the student comes first. And, to give them a safe and comfortable place where they can then perform to the best of their ability, whatever that might be. But if you can get them at least feeling comfortable in the school, then you've at least done your part. I know as a district that we're really working to expand and improve upon what we have in the social emotional program, and we are cheering you on in terms of that, and looking forward to seeing that progress, because obviously we've seen the need for it and the success that you can have when you do run a successful one. So.
Absolutely. We know ourselves just as adults that if you've had a fight with your spouse or a bad day and you come to work, you're not always 100% on the task at hand that you need. So certainly children are experiencing those same thoughts and issues. So Pete, I know that there's multi-tiered approaches at the high school as well, and I know that for years you've been involved in creating and collaborating and working to make a wonderful environment for our students. Could you kind of tell us a little bit about what's happening at the high school, please?
Certainly. North Andover High School is a very fast-paced academic environment. It's got a rotating schedule, it's got trimester schedule, and sometimes life happens and you have to modify schedules and programs to meet the needs of students. So we do have a 3-tier response, the first tier being the guidance department run by Steve Nugent. And those guidance counselors have relationships with students, they have relationships with parents, so they're really the first stop in terms of determining what need or what modifications we need to put in place. It may be as simple as scheduling them for after-school help in the ADC, the Academic Development Center run by Donna Cody, where we have a computer lab that's staffed and Donna runs around and collects work and serves as a support system and communicator for the kids to try and help them get caught up. A second step is the Focus program, which I was lucky enough to work with for over 20 years, and that's run by Allison Colarusso and Sarah Hickey. And they have a drop-in counseling center where if a student needs to be scheduled for a soft place to land, we like to think of it as that, they could be scheduled there where they'll get emotional help, some counseling if they need it, they'll get some academic help. And they also do something kind of creative. They run a food service training class where they actually produce 36 to 42 meals a day, every day, and serve them to students and staff in an alternative lunch. The alternative lunch serves as another soft place to land where kids can come if they don't want to deal with what could be the chaotic scene in the cafeteria where there's 300 kids served.
And the noise and the sensory input that they're experiencing.
So it's a staffed place, and some kids are there for the food, and some kids are there because they can get a computer and get some work done, and some kids are there for the environment. And it works. Another thing about the food service training class is it certifies over 60 kids a year as serve-safe food handlers, and many kids have gotten jobs in the food service industry because of that class. A third tier of response is the team program. It's staffed by Megan Picanso and Tom DeStefano. Tom's a school adjustment counselor, Megan's a special ed teacher. It's a more academic setting because it doesn't have the hustle and bustle of the food service room. But many kids find that the perfect response to whatever they're dealing with when they have that one period a day to get focused and get some support.
That's great. So I've had an opportunity myself to go into the focus room while they were having lunch and sit with the students and, engage in conversation and also observe the conversations that they were having. And what I really enjoyed and appreciated about the program is that I saw students from all different groups coming together to the lunch table, whether it was a football player sitting with some of the tech kids that were helping out with this TV show that we're producing, cheerleaders, kids that just, as you said, had some sensory input issues and just wanted to come in. And they were all engaged and laughing and having a great time. And it was just wonderful for me to observe. And is that a typical day that I see in there?
It is, and I think that's one of the things I've enjoyed most about working in North Andover for so many years. That's the culture of this school system. And I think it starts with Mary Lou Connors in preschool, and then it's embraced in elementary school and certainly in the middle school. And someone asked me, is there a lot of bullying at North Andover High? And I said, I think the only kid that would be bullied would be the kid that would pick on the special needs kid, because this is a community that looks out for each other. The students do that from elementary school on, and I think staff try to collaborate through the different stages they go through. I'm stating the obvious, but the transition work that Jim and the other counselors do when they are sent to the high school, they're at the high school, we go down there, we meet, we talk, we collaborate. We try to learn as much about the kids as we can, and the level of caring that they have for those 8th graders coming up.
Right.
It's just a pleasure. And they're our first call if we have trouble with a freshman, and they're at our service.
So it sounds like what's also happening, in addition to all of the individual things that are happening at the different levels of schools, there's also a vertical alignment and a vertical conversation between professionals to ensure that as your child transitions from Mary Lou's preschool to an elementary school to the middle school to the high school, that all of that communication is happening. Would you say that's true and that you share a certain language?
I think there's always room for improvement. And if we ever say, what can we improve on, it's transition plans and communication, but we care about it and we respect each other and rely on each other. And it's something I think we can always grow and get better at.
And I think part of the role of a director of social emotional learning is to help put together the systems and structures in place to support all of the work so that things like communication can improve when there's transition work that needs to be done.
Great, and I know you meet with your teams
Yes.
in a vertical manner.
Correct.
Good, that's great. And finally, and most excitedly, we have our work with Rick in the community, and I know Rick and I have collaborated on a project recently. So Rick, could you share with us much of the work that you've done?
Yes, thanks for having us. I think when people drive by 33 Johnson Street, they see a rec center, and I don't think people understand the close collaboration we've had with the school department for 30 years. Superintendent Blaisdell, back in 1988, said, let's kind of connect the community with our schools, and we've been doing that. Pete and I were much younger men when the Focus program first started, but we started out at actually having offices both at the middle school and the high school, doing a lot of informational referral, crisis intervention, conflict resolution, and then it grew into us running very popular girls groups that have been maintained now for 30 years.
Wow.
Periodic at times we've had boys groups. I wish we actually had a few more of that. And over the years we've been working closely with guidance counselors and the assistant principals in particular, both the middle school and the high school. So I see Jim a lot. I see Pete when he was working here in terms of how can we kind of work together. The relationship is extremely unique. As I've told you and Nikki, I would say that there's not another youth center that has this type of relationship with a school department, usually separate entities. And our take is that you guys are educating them 6 hours a day and we see them after school, evenings, and summertime in particular. So how are we going to coordinate? So one of our full-time positions, Laura Stevens is our support services coordinator. She's actually in the school system about 25 hours a week.
Former name's intern, by the way.
Yes, she was an intern at the middle school. Running groups, doing conflict resolution, being involved with touching and what we call tracking with kids and connecting and having a great relationship. We actually sit on both student assistance groups at the middle school. It's called Team Consult. We're there every Friday where myself and Laura work with great group of professionals. We're also here on Wednesdays dealing with the high school personnel and kind of identifying kids. And we work a lot in how are we going to service them after school, weekends, and in the summertime. We've also engaged in a number of interesting things. Probably the most intriguing one is our collaboration last summer with your department in linking special ed into our summer fun recreational program, which was a huge success. Had some great personnel from the school department working with our great high school and college kids during the summer, and huge success, and we're hoping to continue that again this year. We're also taking social and emotional learning to a whole different level at the youth center. We have our own tracking and conflict resolution. We've had a rough week working with Jim and some challenging middle school kids, but I think we've got a good handle on some things we're doing. We started our own groups up at the youth center. We're excited about an anxiety group that we're going to be starting really shortly. We're working with Cam to start up a podcast to make parents aware of a lot of the issues that we're seeing and in terms of some of the issues that kids are facing at the youth center as well as within the community. So, in tying in what we work with the school department, I think it's unique. I think it's great. It's had huge success, and I'm excited to see how the next 10 years of our collaboration will be with the school department. But I think North Andover is very lucky to have as many professionals in the community and the school department working together on this.
Yeah, thank you. I have to say I was thrilled as a new person last year having the ability to engage in conversation with you with regard to really mixing some of our special education students and putting them in the general setting of their peers. It was also wonderful to have such a nice response from your staff when our board certified behavior analyst, our school therapist came to do trainings with your staff and to teach them what's the best way to work with certain students and approach students and speak to students. And it was just a delight to have that opportunity.
Yeah, it was huge, helpful to my college and high school kids and dealing with the kids that you were sending, but it also helped us deal with all the kids that we're already dealing with. And it was a great collaboration. Your guys were on site working with our people, and again, I think we were a little like, let's see how this goes,
Yeah.
but I think we were both excited that we were going to make it happen, and it was a success, and we're continuing on looking for this year's summer program also. So the whole collaboration on social emotional learning for us was vindicated in the fact that we've had a year-long youth needs assessment that was just completed, which we'll be revealing to the community shortly. But one of the major findings was that the youth center itself needs to incorporate even more into social emotional learning and some of the needs. And we wanted to hear that because that is the direction we would like to eventually become a counseling component at the youth center. So some exciting things that are happening with that, and again, we just hope to continue working with our partnership with the school department.
Yeah, we're excited about that too, and also to parallel doing some survey work. Nikki, do you want to talk a little bit about the work we're doing with Transform Ed, which really can apply directly to the same types of data points that you're collecting as well?
Sure. So we are now going to be partnering with a group in Boston called Transform Ed, and they're going to help us to administer district-wide surveys, 2 of them. One will be a school culture climate survey, and one will measure specifically for social emotional learning skills that once we implement a social emotional learning curriculum, we'll be able to track. We'll get some baseline data from Transform Ed, who will help us collect the data, analyze it, generate reports, and then we will re-administer the surveys in the following spring next year and then the following spring. So that way we can really get a lot of baseline data, see where we're at, and that data is going to drive the intervention plans and what we put into place for social emotional learning within the district.
That's terrific, and we can look at collaborating with Rick and his team and see what similarities when we look at disaggregating, aggregating the data points to see how we can continue to support each other. So that's wonderful. One other component that I think we need to think about now is how can our families and our parents take some of this information that we have that we're infusing during the school days, at the rec center, the after-school programs, and we can talk about that as maybe a part 2 of this program. I think maybe bringing some of your staff members in who are right in there doing that hands-on work with the students.
Sure, that would be great.
So I would like to thank my guests for spending their time and sharing this wonderful information in the collaborative spirit that they have. It's important work that they do each day for our students and for the community. Social emotional learning is such a broad and important topic. Again, we feel it's equally important to share this information that you can use in your homes with your children. So I'd like the commitment that at our next Raise Awareness show, we will do a follow-up on SEL topics and bring some of those staff members that we've named and discussed who can share how you can work with your child in the home environment. I think it'll be a wonderful opportunity for parents to have some hands-on approaches that they can use. Feel free to visit our North Andover Student Services webpage for more information and updates. I hope you've enjoyed our show and learned something about our schools, community, and the work that we do together in a collaborative effort. Thank you.